Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close Up, fraud cases are on the rise in Iowa, costing consumers a lot of money. What you need to know to spot potential scams. And with more than a month into legislative session, bills are quickly advancing through the Iowa State House. We break down where things stand for public school funding, prescription drug reforms, and more.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. I'm Chief Political Reporter Amanda Rooker. Every year, state lawmakers determine how much Iowa will spend per student on each public school district across the state. Now, lawmakers are getting closer to reaching a deal. House Republicans advanced a plan last Thursday that would increase per pupil funding by 2.25%. So that would mean schools would get a little more than $8,000 for each student in their district. That is roughly $200 more per student than what schools got this year. The proposal sparked fiery debate on the House floor about what's necessary to improve education in our state. Iowa House Republicans say a 2.25% increase in public school funding
is the largest appropriation we will do in this body this year. It's almost $4 billion.
Representative Dan Gelbach, a Republican from Urbandale, led the bill on the House floor. He praised the extra elements in the plan, like allowing districts to share more management positions and a one-time boost of $22 million in response to inflation. Gelbach also says some schools have longer bus routes or other factors that make their transportation costs higher than the statewide average. The House plan would send those schools money to bring down their costs.
We also, from a caucus, want to address the needs of our local, more rural school districts, and that's why we're including in this package a transportation equity fund of additional $5.3 million, which will take any district that has a state cost average of over the average district down to that average. And lastly, this increases the supplementary weighting for school operational sharing from 21 to 25, which encourages our rural schools to operationally share administrative staff, including superintendents, curriculum directors, etc.
While Democrats praised those pieces,
what we agree is positive.
They said the 2.25% increase would not meet the needs of schools across the state. They read comments from teachers and superintendents who are asking for more help.
Good teachers are leaving the profession because they keep getting asked to do more with less. Larger class sizes, outdated learning materials, lack of access to specialized services to truly prepare a future workforce. Kids with special education needs who need help in subjects like math and reading won't get the attention they deserve in the classroom.
House Minority Leader Jennifer Comfer said some teachers don't have enough funding to do what the state is asking of them.
One teacher said, "You keep asking us to teach specific things, to not teach specific things, to provide mental health care, to provide wraparound services for hungry kids and tired kids and kids in crisis, but you are not giving us the tools to do it. You're asking us for more with less, and it's been going on too long."
Republicans have passed several laws making major education changes in recent years. That includes setting new academic standards and new library programs, and requiring specific action if students are chronically absent. Republicans are pitching more changes this year.
If school districts are mandated to make major curriculum changes or add expensive classes like computer science, or mandated to improve scores, they must receive additional funding to make these things happen. Funding that falls below the current prediction of inflation, which is expected to be well over 3% in the coming year, does not allow for the time and money to make these things happen.
Representative Larry McBurney, a Democrat from Urbandale, said the House funding plan would drive up property taxes.
Make no mistake, supporting this bill will be an increase to property taxes. 2.25% is roughly about $21 million short of what we need for over half of the school districts within the state of Iowa to be able to make ends meet. As one superintendent told me bluntly, "Larry, we're looking at the potential of a $1 tax levy increase with 2.25%. A $1 tax levy increase. That's approximately $250 per household within that district."
Democrats proposed a 5% increase in school funding, but their amendment didn't pass.
$6 billion. That is the size of Iowa's budget surplus. When I say we can do better with school funding, I mean quite literally, we have the capacity in our budget to do better.
Republican House Speaker Pat Grassley said dipping into that surplus is not sustainable.
You heard using one-time funds out of the ending balances to fully fund a 5% proposal. As the majority party, when we're putting together these packages, we have to be able to make it fit within the general fund. When we start using one-time funds, we go back to the Culver era of budgeting under the Democrat trifecta, in which you're using ending fund balances of one time to fund general fund ongoing revenues.
Grassley's reference goes back to December of 2008. Democrat, then Governor Chet Culver,
we have an economic emergency,
ordered a 1.5% across-the-board cut to the state budget, and he issued a 10% cut in October of 2009. Those cuts were made around the time of the 2008 Great Recession. Grassley says Republicans' plan now is sustainable and will deliver relief to school districts.
We built a bill in a way that we tried to address the different concerns that address school districts differently. I think we'd all agree that not every school district's the same. That's why we built the proposal the way we did, so it would have different impacts to different needs within the state.
The House plan still needs approval from the Iowa Senate and the governor, who both want a 2% school funding increase instead. Senate Republicans' plan also does not include the transportation equity payments, the one-time funding boost, or the changes to help schools share more positions.
So I'm hopeful as this bill now goes back to the Senate, they will take a look at what some of those other things are, as well as, or on top of the SSA.
Still to come on Close Up, what the school funding plan means for Central Iowa schools. We hear from a superintendent who says the increase won't make up for rising costs. State lawmakers are working on proposals that would send more money to public schools next year. Iowa House lawmakers proposed a 2.25% increase. The Senate wants 2%. KCCI's Ophelia Jacobson spoke with the superintendent of North Polk Community School District. He told her neither proposal would be enough to help them as they continue to face rising costs.
It is a big deal what that SSA amount is for us.
The state legislature is working to decide how much more money Iowa public schools should get next year. The Iowa House passed a plan Thursday to increase the state supplemental aid rate by 2.25%.
To maintain the level of what we're doing, the way we're doing it, 2.25 is not enough, but it's better than 2.
North Polk Superintendent Michael Klein says they need more than what the House and Senate are proposing. The plan passed by the House would give districts around $8,000 per student. That's about $200 more compared to last year.
That's to pay our teachers, to make sure that they have benefits, to make sure that we can heat and cool our buildings, to make sure that we have the instructional supplies to.
Still, Klein says the 2.25% increase doesn't match inflation and won't make up for rising costs.
I mean, we got our health insurance renewals the other day, 11.3%. Our property casualty premiums are going up about 10%.
Ankeny School Superintendent Eric Pruitt agrees. In a statement made to KCCI, Pruitt says in part, quote, "The increase is a step forward, but it falls short of ensuring that schools can meet the needs of students and staff without putting additional pressure on property taxpayers," encouraging lawmakers to consider an SSA increase that meets or exceeds the inflation rate.
It's not getting us as much.
Klein says his school district will have to make some adjustments.
So some of our class sizes are going to have to go up. That's just a reality with not being able to have the funding to fully fund everything we need to do.
But he doesn't anticipate an increase in property taxes.
Now, time is ticking for lawmakers to pass a school funding proposal. Some districts have less than 3 weeks to give final notice of their budget for next school year. Well, also at the State House, lawmakers advanced a bill through committee last week that could help you get your prescriptions filled closer to home. House Study Bill 99 would be new regulations on PBMs or pharmacy benefit managers. So why does that matter to you? Because before you go pick up your prescription, PBMs are the one negotiating drug prices between the pharmacy and the insurance company. But pharmacists say the current process is not working. We went to the Medicap pharmacy in Beaverdale to find out why. Every day, pharmacist Nevin Rudishel helps customers get their medications.
We'll get you taken care of.
But he says on about 10% of the prescriptions he fills, he's losing money.
You have to give it to them, and that's what helps them get better. And it's tough to know that just like on the back end, like that's actually hurtful for business, though it's the right thing to do for people.
According to the Iowa Pharmacy Association, pharmacies enter contracts with pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, to get paid for the drugs they dispense. The association says pharmacies may start out getting a certain amount of money for those medications, but depending on the contract, that can change.
I will receive emails saying, "Stephen, on this medication we're losing hundreds of dollars. How do you want me to proceed?"
Stephen Donnelly, who oversees operations for Medicap pharmacies in Iowa, says PBMs are often not paying them enough to cover the cost of dispensing drugs. Pharmacies then have to decide if they'll stop offering certain drugs or lose money on it.
We end up taking those losses, and that's tough, and I think we're seeing pharmacies really struggle to stay open with those losses.
It's also not the only problem local pharmacies are facing.
Every week I have a patient come in that talks about how they have to either pay more money for their copays to stay with me, or because of that extra cost and those financial pressures have to decide to go somewhere different.
And just need a signature here for the script.
Okay.
Deb Chido's gone to the Medicap pharmacy in Beaverdale for years. It's down the street from her house.
All of a sudden, because of my prescription plan, either I couldn't access it or the cost was out of control.
Now she has to get her prescription somewhere else.
It's not right. It's not right. I should be able to choose wherever I want to go. And you can't. When you're doubling and tripling the price, you have to pay attention to that.
Iowa Pharmacy Association CEO Kate Gaynor says House Study Bill 99 would allow patients to get prescriptions at the pharmacy they want.
Today, a patient may be steered to a pharmacy that's either a far distance away or in some cases, a mail order pharmacy. This bill would not allow PBMs to put those types of incentives or disincentives in place.
She also says the bill would create a new payment model to reimburse pharmacies for the full cost of a drug dispensed to a patient. The bill would also give the state more authority to regulate PBMs.
Getting PBM reform like this to allow that not to happen, allow that patient to get that service in the community that they need, would be very, very helpful. And that's why we need PBM reform.
Now, there are more than 20 groups registered against House Study Bill 99. Some of those people say it would pass costs on to Iowans. Others say the bill is not targeted to only help local pharmacists.
We would really like to figure out a way to help that subgroup, but the bill that's before the legislature doesn't do that. A lot of the money that is moving around under this bill will go to Fortune 500 companies outside the state of Iowa and regional chains that make decisions in boardrooms and not on Main Street.
Republican House Speaker Pat Grassley told reporters last week lawmakers are still considering this proposal. Well, still to come on Close Up, checking your checks. We sit down with two financial experts who are warning the dangers of sending checks in the mail and the advice they're sharing to help stop fraud. Welcome back to Close Up. I am joined now by Paul Benda. He's the Executive Vice President of Risk, Fraud, Cybersecurity of the American Bankers Association, and Adam Gregg, who is former Lieutenant Governor, now President and CEO of the Iowa Bankers Association. Thank you both for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, Adam, I want to start with you. You're now in your new role, but we know back in September you did step down from the Lieutenant Governor's office. Can you walk me through what that decision was like for you?
Well, I'd served in the role of Lieutenant Governor for almost 7.5 years, and it was such an amazing opportunity to serve the people of Iowa, to serve with Governor Reynolds. But I found over time that it was demanding more of my time away from my family. I've got an 8th grader and a 6th grader, and I just felt that pull for something different, and was very blessed that an opportunity came along with the Iowa Bankers Association, with an industry that I've admired for a long time. My wife worked in banking, my mother worked in banking, my wife still works in banking. I had the unique opportunity to travel all over the state of Iowa, all 99 counties every year, visiting business openings, visiting expansions, things like that. So often we were joined by the local banker who had helped make that happen. So I feel very blessed to have this opportunity and to have been able to serve the people of Iowa for as long as I did.
How is it going so far?
It's been going great. Learning a new industry, meeting Iowa bankers all across the state, and really digging in. One of the things that has been really surprising in that, though, is the extent and prevalence of fraud that the bankers talk about and that their customers are dealing with. And so this year, one of our main initiatives in 2025 with the Iowa Bankers Association is raising consumer awareness about fraud. Nobody does more than your Iowa bank to protect you, protect your wealth. However, there are things that consumers can do to better protect themselves. The best way to prevent fraud is to just stop it from happening in the first place, because so often, if you've lost your money to a scam, those funds are going overseas, and it may be difficult or impossible to ever recover it. So that's why we're using the platform of the Iowa Bankers Association to raise awareness about this important issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, in your role, walk me through what some of the trends that you are seeing when it comes to fraud between consumers and their banks.
Sure. One of the things that we are seeing is a lot of impersonation scams. And so you might see this, you've probably gotten in the last week, a text message pretending to be your bank saying, did you actually make this charge? Or we might see this online where someone might be impersonating to be a broker or some other person trying to sell you a service. And so this is the challenge, is that technology has made this a lot easier for the scammers. They can use AI to create new images, deep fakes, change voices. They can spoof the caller ID so that it says your bank's name even though it's a criminal calling you. And so that's the challenge. It's really hard for people to discern what's real and what's not. And that's why we think it's really important to educate people that people can impersonate your bank and try and get you to give up that one-time security passcode so they can access your account.
Can I maybe highlight two trends really quick? Here we are, it's Valentine's Day weekend, it's the season of love. There are a couple things that we want to put on Iowans' radar. First of all, be aware of romance scams.
Oh, what is that?
So think about when somebody reaches out and develops a relationship. They're playing a long game, and at some point, even though you haven't met them in person, they're asking you to send them money. Iowans might easily think, oh, I would never fall for something like that. But the reality is these are very sophisticated scammers who are trying to take advantage of your emotional vulnerabilities to the point where they're watching obituaries to see if someone has recently become a widow or a widower. And they'll reach out, and it may be innocent at first, it may seem like it, but over time they build a relationship, not only to the point that you trust them, but maybe even in some cases love them. And then they ask for funds, and in lots of cases, those funds are actually going overseas, and they may never be recovered again. So we're urging Iowans to be very suspicious. If you haven't met somebody in person, they may not even be a real person. It may actually be somebody who's been human trafficked and has the only way that they get paid or fed is if they are able to develop a relationship with you and steal your money. So it's a really horrible situation. And so we want Iowans to beware of and wise to the ways of the world on how these things happen so that they can spot some of those fact patterns and maybe recognize that this is not a real person and it's highly likely to be a scam.
You know, part of it is spotting that and being aware. If consumers get a text they think is suspicious, it says it's their bank, or what next steps can they take? Especially if there's some urgency to it, they feel like, oh man, I really have to take care of this now. Don't click that link or don't touch that button.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things the scammers use, right? Is that urgency. They want to threaten you. They want to make you act. They don't want you to think. And so anytime, your bank is never going to pressure you to take an action quickly. That's not your real bank. If you get something that you think is suspicious, whether it's from your bank or whether it's saying this package has been delayed, call the number on the back of your card for your bank, call the post office directly, call Amazon through the app on your phone, go direct to the person you know. When someone reaches out to you, the point is you don't know if that person is really real. They could be pretending to be your bank or the government or some other element. So make sure you're the one doing the outreach so that way you'll know who you're talking to.
There are a couple of resources that are available through the American Bankers Association, which is a key partner of the Iowa Bankers Association. BanksNeverAskThat.com. Go on there. It's an anti-phishing campaign, and so that Iowans, if they view those materials, will recognize the kind of questions that banks aren't going to ask you. It may help you discern whether or not that's a real text from your actual bank or whether it's a scammer, perhaps from overseas. The other website I want to highlight is PracticeSafeChecks.com. And I want to make sure you heard that correctly, Practice Safe Checks. But it's all about making sure, check fraud is this was a huge surprise to me. What you might consider old-fashioned check fraud is still one of the biggest ways that Iowans are being scammed and that Americans are being scammed. What happens oftentimes is a handwritten check is stolen out of the mail, and they use chemicals to wash that check, change the payee, and change the amount. So at PracticeSafeChecks.com, there are some basic ideas there that Iowans can incorporate to protect themselves from that type of fraud. Things like using a permanent ink gel pen rather than just your typical ballpoint pen. It's much more difficult for the criminals to wash that check and change the amounts. You can, first of all, one thing to do is abstinence. Abstinence. Don't use a check if you don't have to. You can use an ACH payment. Work with your bank. It's essentially a direct deposit type payment, and you can take that risk totally out of the equation. If you don't have to mail it, if you don't have to walk out to your mailbox and put that flag up, that flag might as well be waving at a scammer to say, hey, there might be something here that you want to steal. If you do have to mail a check, walk into the post office and drop it off there, especially if it's a big one.
Well, we're running out of time here, but quickly, what's the goal that you hope that this campaign, accomplishes?
I would say most of all to raise awareness for consumers so that they know of ways to protect themselves. There's nobody who does more than your local Iowa bank to protect you and to protect your wealth. And so I'd urge Iowans, trust your banker. If you've perhaps been tricked into coming in and withdrawing large amounts of money and your banker's asking questions, listen to them. They may have seen this fact pattern before and they may be suspicious that it's a scam. And so I think, and like I said, PracticeSafeChecks.com, there are basic ways that you can protect yourself. Again, the best way to stop this fraud is to prevent it from happening in the first place. If you never lose those funds in the beginning, you don't have to worry about trying to track it down or trying to hold somebody accountable. And so just being alert to the ways of the world and taking common sense ways to protect yourself.
Well, thank you both for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Well, Close Up will continue after this break. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.